How'd you like this on? The other side? Okay.
Good morning, everyone in British Columbia, and a very special good morning to Bennett San. That is our distinguished Premier of the province of British Columbia at the press conference Friday at the Vancouver International Airport, when Bennett San behaved in a very evasive, dodgy, and unprepared response to many legitimate questions from many legitimate reporters about the murky little scandal involving the dumbness of Jack Kelly, which has now and will continue to grow to even bigger proportions. Is that not right, Bennett San? And is it not a fact, Bennett San, that you must now realize that apart from the harry-carry already committed by one Kelly, that you will have to impose harry-carry on many more, perhaps even some of your own particular staff? Because the situation now over the dirty tricks business is that unless you clear it up, Bennett San, unless you clear it up, it may well be the ogre, apart from the environment and land use problems you're facing politically, which could bring down your government at the next election. Bennett San, so nice to see you home again from your Oriental trips. Harry-carry, well, political harry-carry, you know what I mean, chop off a few heads. Also on this morning's program, my intrepid reporter, Brian Coxford, goes back over an old story which will make your hair stand to end. The third runway has long gone at the international airport. There's still a family being messed about by the federal government. Listen to this woman.
I think it's a ridiculous waste of time and money, everybody's. There's no, to me it's so pointless. They could have put us on the same track as the expropriated ones. We were within that time limit, and it would have saved all this problem. I can't understand why they wouldn't have done it.
Coxford will give you that story. But first this morning, I'm going to cheer you up no end with a man who knows whereof the criminals, the crooks, the drug addicts, the murderers, and the pushers operate in Vancouver. He knows because he's an expert. He's a criminal lawyer who specializes in crime, not himself a criminal. And he's written the most sordid book, which if it were about Chicago or Los Angeles, I would say, what a dreadful place, and every word of it's true. But this book, called The Needles, is about Vancouver. And when you hear or read Bill Deverell's book, The Needles, you will be absolutely shattered and shocked. It's the truth that many of us don't want to face in British Columbia. Bill Deverell is with me this morning, and we'll have at Bill immediately after the first commercial. Nice fella.
I've tried.
I've never complained about your law
15
practice.
seconds, cigarette,
No.
yes.
Well, that's good. That's encouraging.
Isn't it?
9.
Bill Deverell is a practicing lawyer in Vancouver. Bill Deverell took a sabbatical and wrote a book called Needles. Bill Deverell nearly fell off his little island home when he found he'd won 50,000, an award for, you know, and he didn't even know it was coming to him. But behind Bill Deverell's book, I must give you a little background, is a tragic story. It's a tragic story of the province of British Columbia and the city of Vancouver. It's a sordid, horrible, but exciting book about the drug trade in Vancouver. Some people might even call it a little racist, because the key evil figure in it is the man who is the head of the Oriental Connection. And apart from that, there are special drug prosecutors who are painted by Bill Deverell as drug addicts of very low moral standards. There are crooked policemen. There are venal policemen. There are horrible characters, all painted from real life. I am quite sure, Bill Deverell, yourself. How many drug cases have you taken in your day?
Oh, I don't know. I would say I've averaged about 20 to 30 a year over the last 15 years or so. But some of these are long, month-long conspiracies, the million-dollar conspiracies that are so popular with the police departments these days. And you get to know, I got to know things from both sides, because I prosecuted, as you know, and I've defended more than prosecuted, but I've seen how you put a case together.
I know some of the background, or some of the characters you have perhaps created in that book, but is it a fact that every instance and piece of behavior in that book is backed up by your own personal knowledge of the drug trade and all those involved in it?
Well, first of all, it's fiction. It's fiction. It is based upon people I know, events I know, the kind of attitudes police officers have, especially in the drug business, the kind of people I know on the street. I do know street people. I've had junkies nodding out in my office from time to time, find the odd outfit sitting around in the washroom in my office. I've looked at their life from pretty well all levels, and this is a book about junkies, and it's a book about a Vancouver lifestyle that the Chamber of Commerce isn't too interested in advertising about. But that's the story I've tried to tell. It's a kind of sordid story of Vancouver. I agree with you, but it's a true story in the sense that the background is true. The people in it are based on some kind of reality.
Have you been accused, or is it fair for you to take a crafty Oriental, which is the kind of way you describe him, as the kingpin of the connection, who suborns and corrupts the system?
Well, why not? I have, if you can imagine it, been accused of being racist, and because my villains, my key villains,
myself, you know.
Yeah, my key villains
That's
are
motherhood. It's not motherhood to attack Chinese.
You're not allowed. You have to give equal time to Anglo-Saxon villains, I'm told.
Right.
Because my book is about a Chinese organization, and it's an existing Chinese organization, and the Ledane report talked about it. It's called the Chow Chu. It's a mafia-type organization. It's run along the same lines as the mafia, family-oriented, their same dialect. The Ledane Commission, the Drug Commission, expressed some concern they were coming into Vancouver and setting up here and spreading through North America, opening markets. And this is what my book is about, that organization in Vancouver, and I can't make Chinese people Anglo-Saxon in order to satisfy those who want to make sure that villains come from all races.
And that organization is still operating in Vancouver?
As far as I am concerned, it's not proper. It's not obviously organized in the open, but you have from time to time heard of cases of individuals from Hong Kong who had been active in the police departments in their own country, who are here and have been here spending a lot of money, and a lot of people wonder where their money is coming from.
I believe it's called connections, one way or another.
Connections, one way or another.
Now, what about the actual people who administer the law, or the picture you paint of the particular Crown prosecutor? I can't identify anyone who fits that character as a man who is on the needle, who is a heroin freak, and he has an associate with him too who is some kind of minor druggie. Is that within your experience?
Well, I don't think my portrayal of the hero is that unsympathetic. He is a man who, in his younger years...
He's the hero?
He's the hero of my book. He was convicted of an armed robbery when he was a junkie. He reformed. He rehabilitated himself in jail, came out and became a kind of an example to the world of how a man can reform, and he was accepted into the prosecutor's office on that basis. And as the book opens, he's having some problems with his marriage and he is back on the wire again.
Could it be that there are lawyers in British Columbia without in any way identifying anyone who have convictions for such serious offences, but that are allowed into the Law Society on the basis that they have reformed?
And that's so. There
What?
are, and they should be. I mean,
What?
a man's past should not haunt him forever. And there are some very respectable, responsible, and good lawyers in this country who've been convicted of everything from armed robbery to trafficking and drugs.
I thought you
one
were a
time.
special breed with special status, whose word is your bond. Shouldn't we have a guarantee that every person practicing in the courts of British Columbia is virginal as far as criminal offences is concerned?
As far as fraud and as far as offenses that involve honesty, sure. But as far as offenses involving use of drugs, I think that the law societies of this country, and not just British Columbia, are tempering their attitude to people, young lawyers.
I won't say I'm shocked by your attitude.
I know police officers who use not hard drugs but soft drugs, and it's commonly known. I was talking to an RCMP inspector a few months ago who had been training in Regina, and he says most of the kids that go through as rookie cops have used drugs, marijuana. It's common, you know.
It's me that's wrong.
Well, you're probably
I'm out of touch.
becoming closer to being a minority in this world.
I'm a hopeless idealist. I don't think that anyone should be practicing law with any convictions against them whatsoever. That is totally out of fashion, isn't it?
Well, there are even judges with impaired driving convictions, Jack. It's a criminal offense just as possession of marijuana is.
I'd put them off the bench.
Well,
Because if the judge and the system isn't held in the highest repute, there is no hope for democracy.
some of our worst judges have no convictions.
That's true, but that's up to you in the legal profession and the Attorney General's Department and the politicians to clean up your mess, which I think you would concede has existed in a large measure in the city of Vancouver.
I don't think in the legal profession any more than any other profession, medical, the police profession. You're going to find
But you have
bad
a special
apples and good.
status. You are officers of the court. Your word is your bond. Your handshake is it.
And
you're entrusted with the money.
And lawyers are human beings as well.
Yeah, but when they're caught, their heads should be chopped off.
Well, they're human beings, and if you're, I know a lot of good lawyers.
We're getting off the point.
Yeah.
I want to get back to the book, because you have ample grounds on which to... Fred wants me to take a break. My guest is Bill Deverell, highly well-informed criminal lawyer in Vancouver, and suddenly a popular pulp novelist.
Well, I won a prize for it. It's a kind of
thriller.
It's an adventure thriller,
It's
a courtroom
a great
thriller,
book.
and it's intended to keep you reading to the end.
Depresses me intensely, but well worth reading. How's that for a free plug?
That's interesting.
Bill Deverell. Much better than another book I read over the weekend, but if I mention the name of that book, Linda will shoot me. After the break.
Doesn't want to be seen as a big fat kid.
All right, I'll take your word for it. I'm just warning you, that's all. That'll kill you. People had asked to defend me.
Listen, he's one of the loveliest guys there is.
Because we had coffee every morning.
I know.
Cheers for that. Erickson. Talking to Bill Deverell, largely about his books, but we're going to pick his brain. Tell me, Bill Deverell, is there a coffee shop or a nightclub in Vancouver into which an innocent citizen can go without having a conversation taped in the corner, as you so amply demonstrate in the book here?
Taped in the corner?
Overheard by an RCMP or a city police wiretap.
Well, wiretap has become a big police industry now. It used to be that police just used to use informers, people they knew on the street. They're losing those contacts now. They're getting into electronics. I think that is a mistake from an enforcement point of view, because eventually people are just going to stop talking. You know, most of their investigations are based on wiretaps on telephone and wall plugs and that sort of thing. But people for a few years have been innocently talking on the phone. They're not talking now. The police are losing their contacts with the underworld. They're losing their contacts with the informers. They're investing millions of dollars in electronic gear. The average month-long, 2-month-long conspiracy trial in this city costs about $1 million to put together in terms of police costs.
Are you telling me that they also wiretap, said he, knowing the answer, wiretap in Chinese dialects and have to have all that massive miles of tape Translated?
Chinese, Czechoslovakian. There was what we called the Czechoslovakian conspiracy occurred here. It was all in Czech language. They had, I don't know how many thousands of man-hours were spent translating it and putting it into transcript form. That all has to be served on the
Could the
individual
convictions
accused.
have been obtained, or could convictions be obtained without the wiretap evidence?
Sure. The old-fashioned way was to go out to a dealer as an undercover officer, and you wear your hair a little long, you make a buy. And the man went to jail for 10 years. Nowadays, you spend 6 months in an investigation putting together a conspiracy case. You spend $1 million worth of taxpayers' money, the man goes to jail for 10 years. Same result, just more costly.
What you're saying, are you, by the way, no, before I get on to that, the policeman. There are a number of sad cases in the past which you've been able to use to demonstrate in your novel, Crooked Policeman.
Well, you know some of them.
So do you?
Yeah. I haven't picked any particular one out for my Corporal Cudlip in this book, but...
No, but as I was going through the book, I thought, oh, well, there was that case, and there was that case, and obviously Bill is telling the truth in his fictional form here.
I've had too many instances of clients come to me, they've been charged with a drug offense, they've had a lot of cash around because people who deal in drugs don't send out checks to people, and they keep it in cash, where after the police have raided their home, half of that amount of money has gone missing. Or they might have had $40,000 in a closet, and all of a sudden it's only $20,000.
You're accepting the word in this case of the man who's under investigation.
If I had been told about 2 or 3 times only that went on, I would say, well, it's the client is trying to evoke my sympathy, and he's got a story to tell I'm not going to believe. But I've heard that kind of story dozens and dozens and dozens of times.
And therefore you believe there is more than a grain of truth in it, that where there's a paper bag with $157,000 underneath the bed, and where perhaps no one, for reasons of criminality, wants to accept ownership at that moment.
Yeah, because you're not going to go to court and sue for the money back.
Yeah. But wouldn't your lawyer, and this is a nasty question, wouldn't your lawyer, if he knows there's $40,000 or even $20,000 of it left in a paper bag, wouldn't he go to court to get the money back if he can, so his fees can be paid up front?
Sure, that happens all the time.
You ever done it yourself?
I've gone to court to get money back for clients, and that client has paid me money in fees.
No, his money seized at the time of an arrest.
Yeah.
And can't the Crown keep that money on the face of it, or must they prove
Not
it?
unless they can prove that money was used, in fact, for the purchase of drugs.
Would the income tax then be put in the picture and told that Joe Schnarf?
That happens all the time. The income tax people and the RCMP drugs are working hand in hand now. The income tax has become a tool of the RCMP.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know. That means the RCMP now get into everybody's so-called private income tax returns. They go through them. We're told when we fill them out that they're private. Nobody is allowed to look at them, but routinely the RCMP are allowed to go through them.
That's not the point I'm making, Bill. The point I'm making is that I have a fire in my house, right? Police come in and they find $250,000 in paper bags, right? Surely the income tax must be given that information so they can come and say, Webster, where did you get that $250,000? Why didn't you show it in your tax return?
Well, that's income tax. That's totally separate from the drug police. The income tax people have that right.
All right, next question. Are the temptations open to police officers in the drug trade so large, and bribery, you talk of a $250,000 bribe in this book, set for Corporal Cudlip by the Chinese headman, right? Are they so widespread and prevalent that we should perhaps legalize the whole damn thing to keep the police honest?
Yeah, I think you're going to eliminate a lot of corruption if you change the drug laws. You're going to eliminate a lot of crime. The book I wrote is based upon a murder of an informer. That happens in this town. It happens a lot.
Day after day.
You know, and the murder is by a Chinese heroin syndicate and the leader of it. And there are, I don't know how many murders per year that are drug-related in this city, maybe a dozen or so anyway. That will be eliminated. The number of bank robberies, the amount of prostitution in the streets. You know, it's the law against drugs, in my simple way of thinking, that creates so much crime in the city.
The choice is whether we're going to have a clean, placid society with no corruption and everybody on the dope, or a community which makes a moral decision and fights against the evil.
I happen to think people are too sensible and too smart to use drugs merely because drugs are legal.
Bill Deverell, author of the $50,000 prize-winning novel, plus the other $150,000 he'll make on the book, Needles, after this break. From the bend right, any of the prosecutors will whisper.
No, I'm not going to ask her either. I wouldn't dream of asking that question.
Oh, we're on camera again. Bill Deverell began writing at the age of 18 as a $35 a week police reporter.
I was thrilled with the wage.
You were a reporter at one time.
That was at the Saskatoon Star Phoenix. I started off, it was a summer job. They gave me the courts to cover. That's the first thing my first exposure to law and to the police, and I was thrilled by it. I was a journalistic ambulance chaser. I did the disaster beat, and I did that for about 6 or 7 years, and various newspapers. I did the newspaper circuit.
Both the reporters and lawyers will be jealous of you, of your success in this double field of noveling and lawyering.
Well, I understand that every criminal lawyer in Vancouver is writing a book right now and is about to submit it to the next $50,000 Seal Prize contest.
To the next Seal Award. Will this do you any harm when you're dealing with the drug traffic? You will. If I were a drug offender or accused and I came into you today, would you still take my case?
Of course I would. You know, as a lawyer, I probably have a duty to do that. But beyond that, I don't make judgments about people who come into my office as to whether they're guilty or innocent or just how savage a crime they might
Or where
have
the
committed.
money comes from to pay for your large fees, not exorbitant.
Well, thank you for that. Nor does anyone else ask where the money comes from. In any other kind of, the banks don't ask where they deposit the money. They sometimes come in with huge deposits. But
Okay, let's I'm only goading you, as you well know. You know.
Well, I can do it on legal aid or I can do it for money. I used to do it mostly on legal aid. Now I do it for money. Eventually, you reach that stage of your career where you get paid for your
What have we
services.
talked about this morning? We've said it's a very exciting book. We've said it's based on fact in the city of Vancouver.
It's set. There's about a third of it is a trial. It's set in the Vancouver, the old Vancouver courthouse, which I think it is a shame that is not to continue to be the Vancouver courthouse. It is.
Who do you think you are, a judge of the Court of Appeal?
Well,
To stick your nose into that sacred controversy?
I know. That is a fairly sacred controversy. But it seems to me that instead of giving it over to the art people, they should at least preserve the great assize court in the old building.
They tell me that the art gallery has only got a 2-bit collection anyway and isn't worthy of the building.
May well be. That may well be.
I am with you. We're presently preparing a little story on the graciousness and the beauty of the old art gallery. And I would already, as you well know, we'll need more courts, despite the people's luxury palace of law, with its 35 or so courtrooms. We're going to need more courts very shortly.
Now, it's a plastic building. The old courthouse is made of marble and oak and mahogany and stained glass, and it's a beautiful setting for a trial.
Arthur Erickson, Bill Deverell says that your $137 million effort is a plastic building and not worthy of the majesty and dignity of the law.
That's my view.
And I put the words properly in your mouth, witness.
I share that with all sorts of other trial lawyers.
That's because lawyers, despite your advanced civil libertarian views, are basically stuffy establishment people.
We're a little bit old-fashioned, and I'm not ashamed to say that.
Well, there's only one exaggeration in your book that I can place my hand on right away, unless you know more about unsolved crimes than I do. The brutal way in which the informer is killed and hung like a Nazi, like in the same way as Hitler killed the generals.
Well, the leader of the Chao Chu Chinese organization is a professional person. He happens to be an acupuncturist. He is also sick. He suffers from a form of schizophrenia, and that develops through the course of the book. And eventually, he sees as his nemesis the prosecutor. The junkie prosecutor whom you've been describing.
Your friend, the junkie prosecutor.
And they come together at the end in a climax. But he has a quirky way of killing people. I won't want to discuss
I don't
it.
think although we've had people shot down in Stanley Park, we've had people carved up and tortured in bathtubs, we've had people with their heads bashed in with rocks in Squamish, we've had people slaughtered in front of their children for an ounce of heroin and this and that, but I can't think of anyone being hung up and trussed like a Hitler victim. Do you know one?
In a Chinese meat barbecue store. Well,
At 40 degrees.
I had to put a little fiction in the book.
A little fiction in the book. Bill, we've gone over a fair number of stuff. You and I disagree totally on what to be of good repute and character means to be a member of the legal profession. I say stainless, and you say, well, as long as
a man is kind, there's not enough heart in our judiciary, and some people with heart do happen to have a few failings.
It's not often I have someone as practical as you, even if you are the president of the BC Civil Liberties Association, are you?
I'm practical?
Yeah, you're a practical person. I mean, most of these civil liberties people that come to me give me a pin in the neck.
Oh.
You're a founding director of the British Columbia Civil Liberties Association and is now its president.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. Well,
You've forgotten that.
My interest is is working in the courts in civil liberties cause. I'm not much of a civil liberties bureaucrat. I don't go well to meetings and that sort of thing. But,
Okay, in 25 words or less, you're on a witness stand this morning, write for me a new drug law for Canada.
I'd decriminalize. I wouldn't legalize.
Decriminalize what?
Everything, all drugs.
Soft drugs?
I would then pass the power to legislate over to the provinces and make it an offense to be in possession only to the extent that it could be seized from you, but that you could not be prosecuted and taken through the criminal courts. That would save approximately $2 billion a year in this country.
What about trafficking?
Marijuana should be treated like we used to treat smugglers, the Bronfmans. Give them a fine of about $1,000 or something like that.
Oh, you're not only anti-Chinese. How about soft drugs? How about the coke, which is the drug of choice of, I'm told, a number of wealthy lawyers in Vancouver?
Yeah. I don't know. It's another step up, but coke is so far away from heroin.
But would you decriminalize it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you would decriminalize heroin?
I'd take the profit out of that too. There's an enormous amount of money being made out of cocaine.
And trust in the good and common sense and our excellent educational system and our great moral values and family unity to keep people on the right lines.
If we operate life on the basis that the government has to be a big brother to all our citizens, I want to opt out, you know. I just don't think people are that stupid and unintelligent they can't make those choices for themselves.
Do you think your point about temptation and police corruption is also a strong argument for the legalization of heroin?
Yeah, we need police. We need honest police.
But is that a strong argument?
Yes, it very much so.
So there's quite a lot of police corruption.
There's a lot of temptation when they see people making a lot of money easily. There's a little bit of envy about that.
Do you think there's much corruption among the police?
There is a tendency among those who are involved in drug enforcement. There are some very, very honest drug policemen, you know, but there are some dishonest drug policemen, just as there are dishonest lawyers. But those who are dishonest in the drug world really give the whole of the police force a very bad name.
Does the factor of potential graft and corruption among law enforcement agencies all around give additional, I mean, really a big boost to your campaign to legalize heroin?
Well, I don't know
what I'm trying to say to you in a clumsy way is, how bad is the corruption?
We'll never know. The McDonald Commission obviously isn't able won't be able to catalog each and every case of theft of exhibit money, and there's a lot of officially approved corruption, though.
Oh, yes, we should get into
Payments to witnesses,
now
to junkie witnesses, giving them a new lifestyle, putting them in some farm off in the corner of Canada someplace and giving them a new identification.
Hold your breath on that. I want to deal with that specifically because that's something that even I don't like after this break. Am I on? Nobody told me. Is it or is it not a fact, Bill Deverell, that your benighted publisher, Jack McClellan, somewhere in the East, had the execrable taste to send out needles as a promotion for your book.
Yeah, they weren't knitting needles either.
There were 25 needles.
They were the kind that are shown on the book that you put in your arm. I didn't know about
Were
it.
you consulted about this witness?
I was a little bit unhappy, Mr. Prosecutor, about the kind of hype that was used in order to sell the book. But I don't sell books. I'm not in that business. I'm writing them.
Because what he should really have done was send out a spoon with a 25 needle. You know, a proper drug addict's kit, shouldn't he?
Well, yeah.
Such as used to be sold in certain drugstores in Vancouver.
You might have put something inside the needle too to give it the
just
air of
give it a
realism.
little shot. Now,
But that was sent to the book reviewers.
I'm always uneasy.
Some of them I know could use it.
Some of them may use it for all you know.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm always appalled when I read in these big drug trials that witness A, who's been kept in police seclusion in case he's killed, which has happened in this town. Witnesses have been
Shot
and mysteriously. That the RCMP have vast sums of money with which to bribe these people and to give them new identities in other places. Give me your experience and your thoughts on that thing.
Well, there's been a recent case in which a former close associate of somebody charged with a heroin trafficking conspiracy was shot on the street, and he was then brought into the confidence of the RCMP, and he agreed to make a statement for the police. I'm sure it was the Vancouver City Drugs or the RCMP, but in any event, he became the prime witness in the case and received thousands of dollars. He's set up for the rest of his life, or was set up for the rest of his life, except he had a complaint about the amount of money that the RCMP was willing to give him and wanted more, and when he didn't get more, he retracted his statement to the police. That's still going on appeal up to, I think that's going up to the Supreme Court of Canada, that case. But that's a kind of an example of the official corruption I'm talking about. When you start buying witnesses, the whole system of justice is tainted.
Yet, on the other hand, to put on my RCMP hat, and as we know, there are many, many good and dedicated men in it, how else can you get to the nub of an evil drug conspiracy unless you buy somebody on the inside?
A good undercover operation. If you train police officers, they have to be trained how to act too. They have to be good actors. And they get into the organization, they infiltrate it, and they come out with a case. Buying witnesses is the riskiest way of going into a courtroom in order to prosecute somebody.
And of course, any one of those witnesses who has been bought, even though he's been given a new identity, is on the death list of the original syndicate. Is that not so?
That's so. That's so. I mean, his, and to that degree, of course, he's willing to undertake the risk, but the police are exposing him to that risk too by putting him in court. In the old days, they just used informers. They never put them in court. They never took statements from them. They were there to give them information when they needed the information.
Do you think the police were more efficient in the old days?
I think they were less the technicians and less the bureaucrats and more the hard-slugging street policemen, and they knew people. You can't be a good police officer unless you know people, you have contacts, and can handle yourself on the street. Now they're sitting in rooms with banks of telephones listening to people's conversations. They've got 60 phone lines on tap at any one time.
How many?
About 60 lines. That's in the RCMP CLUE office in Vancouver. And there may be, from time to time, even more. And they're all being recorded, these conversations, on your tape recordings, and they're being taken off. They might use maybe 1% of those conversations in court. And there's all sorts, thousands of innocent conversations being listened to. You know, Mrs. So-and-so is going out to buy groceries. There's nothing harmful about that. There might be a few rather personal secrets are being listened to. I know that that conversations between myself and other lawyers and clients have been tapped by the police, because they happen to have a tap on the guy's phone. He phones in. Your voice is going to be there. I've heard some voices of some very prominent lawyers in the city played in a courtroom.
And with some of the people I talk to on the telephone, I'm bound to be on a wiretap.
Oh, you probably are. You probably are.
With some
someplace.
of the most colorful language on it too.
You might find that you've said something a little awkward or embarrassing that you want to forget that is being cataloged and kept someplace.
Is there an authority there for each and every tap, or is it arbitrary?
No, by law, it is required to obtain a judge's warrant to allow you to tap for 30 to 60 days. But then you have complete license over that period of time with respect to that one phone or any phone that the individual might use according to the tenor of the judge's authorization. And they're given out, of course, fairly liberally because there's no one there to oppose the application for an authorization.
Just go to a judge and
the
say,
prosecutor goes in with an affidavit and he says, I want an authorization to tap so-and-so's phone because the affidavit states that we believe he's involved in this crime or that crime. Of course, the guy has no lawyer there to argue, well, no, the evidence is pretty specious. So the judge has really little alternative but to give the authorization out.
if at the end of that time they have found nothing incriminating on the wiretap on your telephone, not mine, must they tell you that they have been tapping you?
Oh, yeah, you might get a notice 6 months or so later from the federal government saying that your phone was tapped. That's all. That's all they'll tell you. They won't give you copies of your tapes back, and they won't tell you the reason they were tapping it. They'll just tell you your phone was tapped.
Well, now, here you are, Bill.
That's a form of open government, I suppose.
When did you start practicing law?
About 15 years ago.
How old are you? The truth, please.
42.
42. So you were quite late into the law business, honey.
Well, I was a journalist and worked my way through.
A reporter.
A reporter.
A journalist is a newspaper reporter out of a job.
Reporter and an editor.
I see.
I worked my way through law school. I took my law at the University of Saskatchewan, worked as the night city editor of the paper there, and
Saskatoon Star Phoenix?
yeah, you bet. That's my.
And now you're on the huckster circuit.
Yeah, that's right.
How many
I'm on the reverse side now.
How many huckster appearances have you got scheduled between now and Christmas?
Well, yours is the first.
Of course.
And I'm going east. I'm taking I don't know, about 4 or 5 different interviews today. This is the official start of my tour. At 11:59, they are putting me on a plane tonight. I'm allowed to sleep on the plane, and I get up in Toronto in the morning about 7 o'clock, and I have about 5 or 6 other shows to go.
And you've already got an option from films on this?
Pretty good option. It's
Great publicity for the city of Vancouver, won't it?
Some people won't like it. The people in our Chamber of Commerce and Board of Trade might be a little unhappy about it.
I think we deserve it.
It's about time. It's about time some truth was told.
Questions to Bill Deverell, here this morning as an author. On the side, he's also a very well-known criminal lawyer. He won't give you no advice for free on this program. After the break. Got to be finished.
Okay, got enough?
Won
15 seconds.
4 major awards last year after being on here 6 months.
You did.
No money with any. There's a certain pleasure in having you on the program this morning, Bill, because for years I've been screaming, you know, what a disgusting, horrible, filthy, corrupt city this is when it comes to drugs. And I'm sure nobody believes me. But they might believe you. Go ahead to Bill Deverell.
Hello, Bill Deverell.
Hello.
Good morning. You should be commended on the name of your book, Needles. And I think that is marvelous. Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And I'd like to know, where did you have your book published, please?
McClellan and Stewart, Toronto, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Bill?
Yes, speak up.
Yeah, I was just wondering, how long does it take to get established as a good criminal lawyer in Vancouver?
I don't know. Are you one?
No, I was just wondering.
For some people, it takes forever. For others, it takes a matter of few years. I mean, that's a kind of field you either have it or you don't have it, you know? It's a specialist field.
There's only about 3 or 4 that are mentioned quite often in the paper, and I was just wondering, is that the type of field that you wanted to go in the beginning, or would you take corporate law?
Well, I wouldn't pick my lawyers from the newspapers, but you know, I wouldn't go into criminal law if I had my choice. You're going to make about 5 times as much money in corporate law.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, with Mr. Deverell's experience and knowledge, he must really know by now that there's no conceivable way that the government or any legislation is going to allow legalization of drugs. I mean, let's face it, it's because of this illegal drugs that we do have that keeps the, quote, underworld market happening. You've got to know that by now.
It also keeps...
legalize drugs to lower the price. If you legalize it, you're going to lower the price.
Yeah.
Profits are not going to be there.
You're going to have to lay off a lot of policemen and perhaps lay off a lot of lawyers, too, if you legalize drugs, but you're going to save taxpayers a lot of money. There's all sorts of more useful things people like me, criminal lawyers like me, could be doing.
Is there any country in the Western world which has made such a decision as you advocated in the Deverell law?
The problem is most of the countries in the Western world are tied together in a treaty. It's an international treaty whereby the Western nations in Europe and North America have agreed to make possession and trafficking in drugs criminal. So there are a few which have lesser penalties, and there are some parts of the world, even the States, where they've almost legalized marijuana. It will come, but it's not going to come in this...
The answer to my question is no.
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Webster, Mr. Deverell. 2 small questions. If you both know of crooked policemen, why are they still allowed to be on the force? 2, even though your book is so-called fiction, aren't you a little bit scared that somebody might take offense and come after you?
To answer the first question, we were talking about cases in which policemen have been proven in the past with public knowledge and public charges to be corrupt. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, the second question.
Well, there's nobody in my book who is in Vancouver whom I have attacked or referred to. I'm not worried about anybody recognizing himself in the book. No, I'm not concerned about that. It is a work of fiction. If it were, if I'd changed some of the names and some of the devices and some of the plot, I might have written a book of what was really going on. But I don't think I should be worried. Maybe I should be.
Well, if anything happens to you, I'll certainly pull a clip out of this and show it on the air and say, here was the thing that caused them to be knocked on the
It'd be a good news item.
Excellent news item.
Might help sell the book.
So when you're lying there, or hanging up on the meat hook, don't forget to give me a call.
I'll give it to you first, Jack.
No, I think you're safe enough, Bill. Go ahead, please.
Hello, yes. You were talking about corruption on a high level, like dealing with heroin addicts and how the police bribe the prime witnesses and that. I just wanted to know if your viewers were aware that this goes on a lower level too, that someone who is busted for a few joints of marijuana will also be asked to inform on his friends or on, you know, the local dealer and that, and that this goes on with... That's standard police procedure. If they enter your house, if they see some pot plants growing in your window and they get a warrant, sometimes they don't even bother with the warrant. They go in your house and they say, have you got anything more? They find your stash. They then say, where did you get this from? They try to get a list of dealers. That's standard, and they try to make informers out of people. They also offer to drop the charges if you inform, too. Oh, yeah. If you can bring in a trafficker for them, they're going to drop the charges against you, because they're only going to get a $50 fine out of you for your few joints of marijuana. I was also wondering if police have to have a warrant to enter your house. There are certain kinds of police who do and certain kinds of police who don't. Those who have a writ of assistance, which is like a lifetime right to go into anybody's house or any business premise you want to, it's given by the Solicitor General. They don't need a search warrant.
Only for specific purposes.
But for drug purposes. We're talking about drugs.
Mm-hmm. So if it's a drug charge...
But other police officers need search warrants, and they're obtained fairly easily through the Justice of the Peace. But this country's gone hog wild with writs of assistance, giving police powers. That's one of the things that the Civil Liberties Association is asking the federal government to look at, reducing the number of such writs that are out.
That's really the thing that caused the Boston Tea Party.
Yeah, yeah.
unauthorized search and seizure.
That's right, that's right. We don't seem to be, in this country, able to protect ourselves from that sort of thing as much as they do in the States.
They don't have it in Britain, do they?
No. No.
They wiped it out years and years and years ago. Ma'am, did you go through this business of being asked by the police to inform on your pot-smoking friends?
Yes, I have. And almost all my friends who've ever been caught with a pipe or anything on them have.
Did you inform on them?
Oh, no.
What was your penalty?
Pardon?
Were you charged?
Oh, yes, yeah.
What was your penalty?
It was a $150 fine.
Only caught once?
Yeah, that was with resin in a pipe. I wasn't actually caught with any marijuana on me.
How old are you?
I'm 19.
Best of luck, my dear. Duncan, BC.
Hi, I'm 18 years old, high school graduate. I use marijuana regularly. And 4 months ago, I was caught and prosecuted and fined $100 for possession. This gives me a criminal record, and it's going to hinder my travel and job opportunities. My question is to Jack is, do you think this is a fair penalty for what I did?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
You think that my travel opportunities and my job opportunities should be hindered?
If you travel, you'll probably finish up in some sweaty dungeon in Iran.
Oh.
No, you deserved it. You knew it was against the law. You got nailed for it. You can sit it out. In 5 years' time, you can get it wiped out. Is that right?
Well, I don't think it is fair. I don't think a man needs a $100 fine for, what was it, a bit of marijuana?
Yes.
There are such things as discharges in this country.
Yes, if he'd got, perhaps if he'd got the right lawyer and the right judge, he'd have got an absolute discharge.
He should have.
Maybe he couldn't afford a lawyer.
I don't know. Could you? Or is he still online?
Did you have a lawyer?
Yes.
Did he ask for an absolute discharge?
Yes.
And he didn't get one?
No.
Did you have any other record?
Pardon me?
Did you have a previous record?
No, I don't.
You see, some of our judges are just about as old-fashioned as Jack Webster, and they don't give out discharges to.
I'm sorry about it, old boy. Just sit down. He can get a pardon, can't he?
After a few years, yeah.
Thank you. After the break. Bill, as a civil libertarian, you've made your position perfectly clear. Not legalization, but decriminalization. And you would still stop the trafficking in it.
Yeah.
Heavy penalties.
Well, I wouldn't impose great heavy penalties. There wouldn't be much trafficking in it. If you take the profit out, it's not going to be a great deal of trafficking in it.
Do you smoke pot?
No.
Never
I'll
would.
tell you one thing, though. If I did smoke pot, I wouldn't admit it. You know, and I think that's true of so many. There's another kind of thing that our drug laws do. They create a fair bit of dishonesty. I know a lot of lawyers in the city who will say they don't smoke
You've
pot.
stolen my next question. How widespread is the use of, let's say, up to coke among the legal profession, from your knowledge?
Among younger lawyers, I would say it's not that uncommon, but among younger doctors and among younger accountants and among younger people who work in TV studios, it's probably not that uncommon.
I wouldn't be the least surprised. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was wondering if you thought maybe there was more than one syndicate in Vancouver involved in the drug trade.
Well, Vancouver is a small enough city that one syndicate can control it. There have been a number over the years of different syndicates warring with each other over who controls it. There are probably more than one syndicate in Vancouver, but there is a main one or two, and the rest of them are just small-time operators. But it is true that there are Hong Kong-based organizations, Chow-Chu organizations, which are now penetrating into Vancouver, and I suspect there's going to be some conflict, some war that is going to break out.
Well, we've had the Montreal connection, we've had the Czech connection, we've had many other connections.
Well, Montreal used to be the
connection.
major gateway.
Yeah.
Vancouver has now become the major gateway for heroin, for Asian heroin into almost all of North America. It's the busiest port on the Pacific coast.
If you decriminalized heroin in this country, you'd have to put up a brick wall along the 49th parallel to keep all the Yankee junkies out.
Right.
Yeah.
Also,
Wouldn't
I
you?
was wondering.
Wouldn't you, Bill?
One of the things they'd probably have to do is do it by treaty. And there's no, I think the United States is moving just about as quickly toward decriminalization as Canada. Now, that's not very quick, but they're moving in that direction.
Western world takes to dope.
I see even the Vancouver province was supporting legalization of heroin the other morning.
Would you believe it?
So I'm with some fairly establishment friends.
Except that it's a...
Yeah, I was also wondering about, like, do you think, like, how explicit do you get in your book about how it gets into the country and whatnot?
No, he doesn't get too explicit on that, but it's well worth reading, even at what, $14.95?
$12.95.
Oh, it's a cheap one. $12.95?
$12.95. That's the hardcover.
For what you can read in the daily newspaper with names, if the daily newspapers were to report the drug trade. Go ahead, please.
Hello. I am a wife and mother, and I just can't believe that the author, Mr. Deverell, would legalize drugs. Does this apply to children also? Can they still go out and steal, break into people's homes in order to buy this?
Well, the children can do it now.
Yes.
And they do it now.
Yes. Are you going to let this go on? Break down the whole moral values that my husband fought in the last war to uphold?
Yeah. I'm not an advocate for the use of drugs. I'm not an advocate for the use of drugs by children, certainly. What I am saying is that because drugs are against the law, people's homes are being broken into, and there are young women on the street prostituting themselves, and life has become, in certain areas of the city, a fairly precious commodity as a result of that. What I'm saying that legalization would do is result in a decrease in crime and a decrease in fear in the city.
But the moment you decriminalize it, Bill Deverell, and you can't get away from this, you give it the implicit stamp of approval.
I don't agree with that. You can decriminalize without legalizing. You can still make it a minor provincial type of offense, like even a traffic offense, where you can give a ticket to somebody.
Damn it, excuse me, liquor is bad enough.
They do that in Oregon with marijuana. There has been a decrease in the use of drugs in that state.
Do you believe that?
Yes, I believe it.
Okay, you're talking about, like, all the crooks and the prostitutes and everything, and you're talking about the kids on the street. What about the average citizen? What about us that we have to put up with all this nonsense and can't go out of the house or can't leave the house without the whole place lit up because someone's going to... I'm getting back to breaking in to getting money for this junk.
Yes, right, and you shouldn't be forced to live that way. And what I'm saying is that if they did decriminalize drugs, you would not be living in such fear. People would not be having to break into people's homes and steal their TV sets and their stereos and so on and so forth in order to support their habit. Especially with respect to heroin, if you could somehow get it through a kind of medical prescription. I know that's going to raise Webster's hackles, but
They tried it in Britain, and it was a total and ghastly failure.
Well, I disagree, and you know, statistics are there to be argued on either side, but I think it works in Britain.
They've scrapped it.
Well,
you must now go to a clinic.
They've modified it.
There's no more Butch chemist line up at midnight with all the Canadian junkies screaming for their 18 and 19 and 20 fixies.
But you can get it.
Some of them are some of your best friends.
You can get it through legal means.
Friends.
You know, there are junkies who can survive perfectly well
what do they become?
with a hit or two a day.
What do they become?
And you can be, you know, there's people out in the woods falling trees who are junkies.
Well, God help us all, because most of the junkies I know in Britain are taxi cleaners or railroad station platform sweepers. Well, and this is about the level of their interest.
There are professional people, there are doctors who are junkies, and they carry on very, very well. The problem with junk is just as long as you don't keep trying to get high, you can maintain yourself with a maintenance dose every day. It's those who are looking for an increased high who become, they start using 12 caps, 14 caps, even 20 caps a day. That's where, and they have to come
like
to about
Schultz.
$500 a day to support themselves.
You sound like Schultz. Schultz tells me that if you go on to 300 grams a day, you can increase your tolerance to 5,000 grams.
You can.
A nation of zombies.
That's the syndrome. It's the tolerance syndrome that you...
A nation of zombies.
But people
do you want airline pilots on heroin maintenance?
Most junkies don't do that. Some do. Those are the sick people.
Professional junkies don't. Because it's very difficult to nail a doctor for illegal possession of heroin in which he can be properly in possession. Is that right?
You'll never know, meet him in the street or in the corridor of a hospital, whether he's an addict or not.
Don't say that.
Well,
Webster and Bill
you may not
Deverell.
mean one, but
One more segment. I hate to tell you this, and the people who are wanting the airport story, you ain't going to get it. It's not often a guy of the caliber of Deverell here who, with such blunt and outspoken opinions, and is so willing to make enemies so quickly. Hey, Willie?
well, we're in the same boat.
Oh, no, no, for me it's a profession.
For me, it's a risk.
Yeah, for you it's a risk. Kitty Matt, go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi. I'm I live, sort of stay in Kitimat now, but I'm from Northern Ontario.
What's your point?
My point is that I don't see why all the young people in Canada today getting arrested for this. I think it's very silly. I personally know very many people from my hometown who got arrested for little drug things.
What do you use?
I use very different kinds of marijuana, oil, hash.
Oil, hash, marijuana. No coke?
No.
Can't you afford it?
I wouldn't want to.
Why wouldn't you want to? They tell me it's the most euphoric high of all, isn't it, Bill?
Well, you'll have to try it for yourself, Jack.
Afford it, yes.
Well, how much do you make an hour?
I make $9 an hour.
How much do you spend on drugs a week?
Oh, well, that varies.
How much in a good week?
What's a good week for you?
Well, you know, a good happy week. Come on.
A good happy week.
Yeah.
It all depends what I'm buying and how much it's...
But you use it every day, don't you?
I try to.
And if it was legalized and decriminalized, you'd use twice as much, wouldn't you?
No, I just use it openly.
That's my man.
Is it related to you by any chance?
Sounds a little stoned.
It does, doesn't it? Mind you, I wouldn't recognize the syndrome. Prince George.
Hello, Mr. Webster.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I used to be a drug addict in the streets of Vancouver quite a few years ago.
Come on, come to the point.
At that particular time, it was easier to get drugs, and I wasn't making any money.
It was only about $3 a cap then.
I want to mention about what Mr. Deverell was saying about decriminalizing drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in the state of Washington, and they done that, like possession for over an ounce or 40 grams. And the crime rate in that state went down so drastically that it was unbelievable. On that, where they wouldn't pinch you, or they would pinch you if you had under 40 grams, but it wasn't criminal.
Were you aware of that, Bill? I didn't know about that.
No, are we talking about heroin? Can't be heroin. That's an awful lot of heroin.
Marijuana.
Marijuana.
Tell me, you were a heroin junkie, weren't you?
Yeah, and soft drugs.
You're not using now?
No, definitely not.
How old are you?
37.
Well, he's kind of young to cop out, isn't he? No, it's in the middle 40s and 50s before they give up, before nature makes them give up, isn't it?
Well, you can get tired of drugs at any time. Some people get tired of drinking booze and they quit. You know.
In the Vancouver General Hospital, I'd done 12 days cold turkey.
That fixed you?
That fixed me.
That stop it?
Lost 38 pounds, and it stopped it completely.
Well, I need the 12 days to lose the 38 pounds, but I'm not on any drugs. Anyway, thanks for your interest in the book. Don't forget to buy it. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Jack. Mr. Deverell. I have a brief opinion, a question, and a comment.
Good.
Opinion's directed at you, Jack, concerning the judiciary. I'm the same as you in that I hold the judiciary in the highest regard. It's got to keep our executive, legislative branches in society intact. But I disagree with you when you say that a person is not allowed to a second chance. I believe that should be taken up at the bar, considering the severity of his crime and the amount of crimes that he has committed.
What I said was that judges particularly should not be allowed a second chance.
Sure. I also agree with you in terms of lawyers.
You can't have a judge who is convicted of impaired driving sitting on impaired driving cases.
Right.
That's
I think
nonsense.
you also have to remember, too, that they're walking a very fine line, and that's something to consider. The question is directed to Mr. Deverell.
Your question.
Sir, excuse me for being so blunt, but I cannot agree with you when you talk about decriminalizing hard drugs. Soft drugs I can understand and I can agree with you, but I'm quite sure those in dope circles are falling off their chairs laughing when they're talking the supply and demand laws And you haven't mentioned that at all. You don't say you're going to legalize it. You say you're going to decriminalize it. But the source and the demand are still there. Could you please comment?
Well, you know, a cap of heroin, which might be 3% heroin on the street right now in Vancouver, costs a junkie $30, $35 to buy. Yeah. You could probably get that through a doctor or a drugstore for about 25 cents. You're not going to have to then go to a bank and rob it to get $3,000 to support your habit for a week. That's why that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about criminalizing heroin.
Okay, well, the reason that you surprise me is that you sit there and you talk about decriminalization as hard drugs, and yet the makeup of your book talks about the horrors of the same thing.
Well, that's exactly what the book is about. I wouldn't have had a book if heroin were legal, because nobody would be murdering an informer if heroin were legal. There wouldn't be payoffs to RCMP narcotics officers if heroin were legal. And I'm writing about the situation that has been caused by our present-day laws.
Right. You lead me right into my comment. I'm scared to be so cynical, but I just can't help but be that our system, our democratic system, is the best thing that's ever been made, but I'm afraid that it promotes all the troubles that we're having in terms of the RCMP, the Delta deal, Watergate, Socrat dirty tricks. And to you, Jack, when you talk about these things, you're appalled, but at times you're also surprised, and you surprise me that you're surprised. I hope that you always remain suspect and you investigate things as well and as hard as you always do.
Very kind of you. I'm not surprised in the slightest about anything that happens, but sometimes I have to be surprised, perhaps to waken you up out there.
Very good.
You mustn't accept things as fact.
Thank you.
I'm highly querulous, skeptical, critical, and cynical. And if I wanted to take over a nation, Bill Deverell, I'm beginning to dislike you intensely for the moment, first thing I do is dish out free drugs. I can never forget my experiences in the Far East and the Middle East, where you see nations with free drugs. Just everybody's a bloody, everybody's a zombie.
People wouldn't use them.
And it could be done here just as easy.
Alcohol is legal in this country. There is a certain percentage of alcoholics in this country. I suppose if heroin were legal, there was always going to be a certain percentage of heroin addicts, but you're not talking about any significant numbers. You're not talking about a great majority of people.
Alcohol brings its own punishment. Soft drugs, unfortunately, do not.
Heroin does, however.
Although I have seen the damage that soft drugs have done to youngsters in this system, with overuse even of marijuana, about which we do not yet know the full score, where they are turned into blank-faced, mindless idiots who have lost their memory. And there are some kids who can take marijuana, as you well know, and there are some kids whom it spins out forever.
Mm-hmm. We don't have any kind of a drug education system in this country.
Alcohol.
What we do have is fairly suspect. People don't know how to use drugs.
Alcohol brings its own punishment.
Heroin brings a worse punishment.
That's right. How would you control the use of heroin? Would you just say to the Irving Hesses, the name slipped out of Vancouver, here's your blank, go buy it from anywhere you want, use it. And you know as well as I do, Bill Deverell, that there's nothing lonelier than a junkie with an extra cap or two. And time again, that junkie will introduce the 13-year-old girl from Prince George or the 14-year-old to his habit.
Yeah, but the view we have of the pusher is not really an accurate view. By and large, pushers don't push. They sell to those who are addicted. Anybody who gets into the use of junk basically does that because of his own decision.
On more than one occasion, I have been in upstairs rooms not a stone's throw from your office and my old studio, where you get some pathetic 15-year-old little creature from up country and some slimy heroin addict. And on one occasion, I remember the girl had just had her first shot of heroin.
Well, who's saying that doesn't go on? I mean, that it does happen, right? And it's a tragedy when it happens. But that girl, in a properly ordered society where she's not afraid of doctors and she's not afraid of police, would go to a hospital and say, look, somebody gave me some junk, I'm sick, what can I do about it? She's afraid to now, so she doesn't get any treatment.
Why does my moral gorge rise so suddenly on this subject? Just my background.
I don't know why your moral gorge rises.
Yours doesn't.
No, it doesn't. I've been exposed to it.
Yeah, that's right.
I've seen too many people. There are lots of people who use drugs who are brilliant artists.
Great stuff.
They're not all drugged out, blank-eyed
Most
kids
of the people
sitting
you
on
and
the
I
street.
have met are.
Well, we worked in a particular area of the city.
They used to flog it in my staircase every day.
Yeah, well...
Visitors used to come from Eastern Canada, journalists, and say, "What is happening on your staircase, Mr. Webster?" And I would say, "Why, they're selling dope, you silly woman."
The worst scene in that part of the city are the poor guys with their little bottles of bay rum.
Oh, just
and their cheap local wine. That's a much worse scene.
Yeah.
That's a much more pathetic scene.
Not so many of them. We allowed them to die by changing the law, remember? Yeah. Remember we used to pick up the drunks, put them in a collar, they could save up their checks and sober up. Now we throw them back out in the street. It kills them much quicker. It removes the problem.
Well, that is one aspect of society's cruelty.
On which we're agreed.
I don't think that if one is to legalize heroin, you should treat heroin addicts the same way.
Webster and Bill Deverell, after this break. Bill Deverell is the author of Needles, an astonishingly shocking book, but a true story about Vancouver, fictionalized. Just as well you fictionalized or you'd be fleeing the country.
Well, that's what people are starting to tell me.
Yeah.
I'll build a little stockade around me.
Retreat to your favorite place, which we won't mention.
We won't mention where it is.
No. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is Director Mr. Deverell. I drive late-night bus in Vancouver, so I guess I see as many junkers as he does. But God almighty, if you ever legalize or decriminalize drugs, you are absolutely crazy. You want to see them people sniffing the coke in the back seat with burnout nostrils, then offering it to little kids who have come from a disco on the way home. You got to get rid of these people. You can never, ever legalize or decriminalize things like that. These people are selling death.
Are you talking about sniffing coke on the back of a BC Hydro bus late at night?
I am.
You a bus driver?
I am a bus driver. I've seen it time and time again. I've turned them into the cops. Never mind whether they're innocent or whether they're not innocent. If you don't make an attempt to stop this, it's going to overrun your city. You're going to be a nation of drug addicts. It's just unbelievable. And as regards to Mr. Deverell saying we're in a minority, we're not. We're still in a majority. And now's the time to stop it, not wait to decriminalize it and let people crawl all over you.
Thank you, bus driver. How do you like that one? How does that grab you?
He seems to be a little emotional about it anyway.
So he should be. Go ahead, please. Where from?
Good morning, Mr. Webster.
Aldergrove.
Hello?
Yes, yes.
Yes, in regards to your last caller, I just heard him. Apparently they did the same thing in the 30s about alcohol. But only they used M16s and M1s to kill the guys for drinking and bootlegging. And I think the only way the government is going to wind up legalizing narcotics, as in grass, is by until they can make a dollar on it. And once they can find a way to make a dollar on it, the same way they did with alcohol.
Well, listen, that's a very good question on the Deverell law.
Right now, they lose millions of dollars on it because they don't earn any tax money from the dealers who make money out of drugs. If the government of Canada were able to tap that somehow through a process of decriminalization, I think everyone's personal taxes might go down about 20%.
I just want to push you on the Deverell law. Apart from decriminalizing, how would you distribute?
How would you distribute
I'm
it?
asking Bill how he would like to see the drugs distributed upon decriminalization.
Well, I don't advocate distribution of drugs. There's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of underground network of hippie drug dealers, and it's going to carry on. But
you can
but
always
the people
undersell
who,
the government.
Hey?
You can always undersell the government.
The other strategy is one which I think our governments are going to find a little bit too risky right now. Public opinion isn't ready for it, and that's simply to open up a little government cannabis stores, I suppose, and do their usual rake-off number with smoking drugs that they do with drinking drugs.
It would make for great commercials too, wouldn't it? Guaranteed free from paraquat.
Excuse me.
Buy your cannabis here.
What I called about was I'm an ex-drug addict myself.
What kind of drug addict?
Heroin.
Right.
And I haven't touched anything since 1972.
Good.
And what I actually want to find out is Okay, my mother was murdered in March 16, 1974, by a drug addict in a store robbery at 42nd and Victoria. I don't know if you recall the case.
Been so many, it's difficult.
Right. And he got 10 years for murder. She was stabbed 14 times in the chest and the abdomen. And now, I've read other cases where guys get 20 years for kidnapping and the woman's released back to her husband unharmed. Can you, what is right and what is wrong?
You got 10 years for what? For, was it murder or manslaughter or what?
It was murder. They were going to lessen the charge to involuntary manslaughter.
Well, I don't know. You don't get 10 years for murder. You get life imprisonment. That's the only sentence you get for murder. If it was manslaughter, I could see the 10 years. However, you can get out on parole after 10 years if it's a murder thing. That might be what he's thinking about.
If you're telling us the truth, and I presume you are,
yes.
Vancouver is one of the hair-raising places where you can get this kind of telephone call on an air saying, my mother was murdered March 16th by a drug addict in Victoria Drive, 14 stab wounds.
His mother would probably be alive today had that drug addict had some kind of legal recourse to drugs through a doctor or otherwise.
Were you a heroin addict at the time your mother was killed?
No, I was on withdrawal with the Narcotic Addiction Foundation at Broadway and Cypress at the time.
The old Narcotic Addiction Foundation.
Right, and I found them to be very helpful.
You went on methadone.
Residence for a year.
Are you off methadone now?
Yes, I'm off methadone.
If heroin was
totally. I don't even take aspirin.
Just a minute. If heroin were decriminalized, would you be tempted to go back to it?
Negative.
There. That's a good example of how intelligent people are. They can control their own use of drugs. Here's a man who was an addict. Wouldn't even use it if it were legal.
You're the only guy I ever met who went to the Narcotic Addiction Foundation to beat it. I used to be like a bazaar behind that place, didn't it?
At one point, yes.
Well, you can't force people off drugs. They have to make that decision themselves.
Like alcohol.
Yeah, and that's why this whole heroin treatment program is wrong, that thank God the courts have decided was unconstitutional, because people aren't going to go off the needle unless they've got something inside themselves.
There's only one thing wrong, with great respect to McEachin's judgment, which one couldn't argue with legally, I'm quite sure, that it's not what the majority of people want. The majority of people want the treatment plan, and they want an effort made to control it.
If judges made their decisions on the basis of pandering to majority view, we would not have an independent judiciary.
That's why I don't quarrel with a judgment.
Yeah, it was an excellent judgment.
I just got one quick question for you, Jack.
What's that?
What do you think the Indians used to smoke in the peace pipe years and years ago?
Hemp. Hemp, old boy.
What?
Hemp.
Hemp.
Yeah, a form of hash.
Lots of THC.
It wasn't grass, I don't think. Oh, you're talking about North American Indians or Indian Indians? Indian Indians in India smoke hemp, old chap.
Is that right?
The original hash.
The original hash?
Yes, old chap.
They still do. You can go up and down the streets of some cities in India, and every little shopkeeper's got his hookah pipe going.
That's right. It's like going to Bangkok, and they give you a packet of hash with your room key.
Okay, thanks kindly.
Thank you. Any other little trivia we can let you know about on the way? Kelowna. No drugs in Kelowna. Not much there isn't. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. I've been involved in the drug scene for quite a few years. My mother, or my father, and my stepmother both died because of it. My dad was a user for 30 years, and I look at it this way: the reason he died was not because of the drugs, because he worked for 25 years. He kept his family, everything else. He was forced to go onto the street, and he was forced to live in the situation where he had to do the things steal and the whole works.
The old story, it's not the drug that kills you, it's the way of life because of its criminality.
Way of life.
It's the law against it that kills you.
What kind of drugs are you on now?
I smoke marijuana now, and that's about it.
Well, I got to go, I'm afraid, and I've got to say thanks to Bill Deverell for his outspoken comments and his exciting, although sordid book based on fact in the filthy streets of the city of Vancouver and the province of British Columbia. Grace McCarthy, I'll hate you, but it's a good book. It tells a dreadful story. Done it, Willie?
Thank you, Jack.
And I wish you well on your huckster flights across the country. My thanks to Bill Deverell.